Tariq al-Mazri drank tea every afternoon from the same white ceramic cup in the courtyard behind his house in Khan Yunis. He had done this for 11 years. A Mossad asset made sure it was also the last. The tea was poisoned. The death was logged as cardiac arrest. Heat, age, stress. No autopsy, no suspicion. Just a burial notice sent to the right people on the right day. Tariq had been chosen not for what he controlled, but for who would come to say goodbye. October 14th, 2006. 7 days after Tariq's death, the 9 most senior Qassam Brigade's commanders in southern Gaza stood together at his graveside in the Al-Amal district of Khan Yunis. 41 Israeli civilians and soldiers dead from operations they had directed over 2 years. They had not stood in the same place since 2002. Brigade protocol prohibited it, but funerals were the one exception the protocol could not reach. Mossad had spent 3 months studying that exception. Then they built an operation around a dead man they had decided to create. By the time the procession reached the cemetery, a drone had already been circling overhead for 6 hours, its camera locked on the crowd below. 40 kilometers west, a pilot sat in a cockpit, waiting for one word over the radio: strike. How do you build a trap out of grief and make sure every target walks straight into it? And how close did the whole operation come to falling apart before it even began? This is Operation Morning Circle, and what you are about to hear will leave you speechless. If you want more stories like this, Mossad operations, covert assassinations, and the intelligence decisions that shaped the Middle East, subscribe now. New video every day. The 9 men Mossad needed dead did not know each other socially. That was by design. The Izz ad-Din al-Qassam Brigades structured its southern Gaza command around one principle: separation. No 2 senior operatives shared a safe house. No 2 commanders attended the same meeting. Decisions traveled through chains of intermediaries that made lateral contact between commanders not just unnecessary, but actively discouraged. If one man was captured, his knowledge stopped at the walls of his own cell. The man above him had no record of his subordinates. The man beside him had no access to his role. For 4 years, this system had kept them alive. Israeli intelligence knew each of them by file, not by proximity. Walid Barakat, 34, ran human intelligence collection for the Khan Yunis district, a network of informants embedded in markets, clinics, and municipal offices. Mossad had attempted to place a surveillance asset inside his network twice. Both times, the asset vanished within 3 weeks. Nasser Qassem oversaw the weapons logistics chain from the Sinai border to storage points scattered across Khan Yunis's residential blocks. He moved on foot, changed routes daily, never slept within 2 kilometers of any known cache. Unit 8200 had mapped 47 separate locations where Qassem conducted in-person payments over 18 months. No pattern emerged. The remaining 7 held roles in rocket production, recruitment, counter-surveillance, and financial distribution. And across 3 years of intercepts, checkpoint records, and satellite passes, not one of them had been placed at the same location as another on the same day. In the summer of 2006, a signals intelligence analyst at Unit 8200 was working through a backlog of intercepted communications from Khan Yunis. On the 43rd day of what her supervisor had labeled a low-priority review, she flagged a conversation between a mid-level political officer and an operational courier. The subject was a funeral. One of the men mentioned that a senior commander, referred to by a nickname, had attended the burial of a cell member 2 months earlier, despite standing orders against public gatherings. She pulled the surveillance logs from that date, cross-referenced the cemetery location with known movement records. Then, she ran every funeral-related intercept from the previous 18 months against the attendance files of known operatives. The pattern held. Senior commanders who maintained near-perfect security throughout the year appeared consistently at the funerals of colleagues. Not every funeral, specific ones determined by rank and the social cost of absence. In the closed world of the Qassam brigades, failing to appear at the burial of an operational partner was a visible act. It was noticed. It was discussed. A commander who skipped a colleague's burial sent one signal to everyone watching, that he valued his own safety over the bonds that held the organization together. In a structure built on loyalty, that was a cost most men refused to pay. She wrote a 4-page assessment. It reached Handler 46 days later. 7 years on Gaza targeting. He had processed analyses like this before, theoretical windows with no mechanism to open them. He read it twice, then spent 3 hours cross-referencing it against the 9 active files on his desk. The conclusion was specific. A funeral for a mid to senior operative, ranked high enough to obligate attendance from the commanders above him, but not so senior that his death would trigger a security lockdown across the entire network, would produce, with high probability, a simultaneous gathering of between 6 and 9 figures Israeli intelligence had been trying to locate for years. Fixed location, known date, confirmable attendance. The last qualifying burial in the Khan Yunis network had been 14 months earlier. There was no way to predict when the next would occur.
Handler 40 underlined one sentence in the assessment and wrote 2 words in the margin. Created. He requested a meeting with the Operations Directorate for the following morning. The session lasted 4 hours. 3 senior officers reviewed the targeting files, the attendance analysis, and the proposed framework. The central question was not whether the 9 commanders were legitimate targets. Their operational histories settled that. The question was whether an operation that began with the deliberate killing of a lower-ranking operative solely to manufacture a funeral required a separate tier of authorization before planning could proceed. The department head asked Handler 40 one question. Was there another path to getting all 9 in the same place? Handler 40 had spent 48 hours preparing for that question. Ground assets in Khan Yunis had twice attempted to develop contact inside peripheral network layers without result. Surveillance had failed at the operational level for 3 years. No natural convergence event, no election, no organizational gathering, no summit was visible on any horizon. The department head approved a preliminary planning phase. No assets activated, no targets approached. The team had 30 days to identify a candidate whose rank sat precisely in the range the analysis had defined. Senior enough that his death would command attendance from every commander above him. Junior enough that his absence would not trigger the emergency protocols that would lock the network down for months. They found Tariq al-Mazri in 11 days. Tariq al-Mazri kept a notebook, spiral-bound, brown cover, the kind sold at any stationery shop in Khan Yunis. Inside, in neat Arabic script, he tracked every logistics movement in his sector. Delivery dates, pickup locations, contact names rendered in a private shorthand only he could read. He updated it each evening at the table in his courtyard after his tea. The notebook never left the house. He considered this a security precaution. It was also, without his knowing it, a precise record of how indispensable he had become to the people above him. Tariq had been running logistics for 6 years without a single failure. Shipments arrived. Storage rotations happened on schedule. The men who depended on him never thought about him, which meant the system was working. In the organizational logic of the Qassam brigades, invisibility was the highest form of competence. Tariq had built that carefully, and it protected him in ways that more conspicuous men around him could not achieve. What it could not protect him from was a file in Tel Aviv that described his rank, his habits, his documented heart condition, and his precise position in the chain connecting him to the 9 men Mossad needed in the same place at the same time. The asset who would deliver the poison was known in Mossad's files as Active 31. His name was Yusuf.
43 years old, married, 3 children. He ran a small general goods shop 2 streets from Tariq's house and had known Tariq casually for years, an acquaintance of proximity, not friendship. They exchanged greetings. Tariq occasionally bought household supplies at the shop, nothing more. Yusuf had been recruited in the fall of 2004. The mechanism was debt. A medical crisis in his family had produced bills he could not cover, and a contact introduced through a Jordanian intermediary offered a solution: periodic reporting on local movement patterns. Nothing operational, nothing that would endanger him. The contact worked for Israeli intelligence, though Yusuf was never told this directly. He understood it the way a man understands something he has chosen not to examine. The money arrived. His family stabilized. For almost 2 years, the requests stayed minor. Building permit records, delivery schedules, names attached to addresses. In September of 2006, the requests changed. Yusuf's field handler, a voice on a specific prepaid phone, never a face, instructed him to begin visiting Tariq more frequently. Not intrusively, the way a neighbor deepens a casual acquaintance over time. Bring something to the shop, offer tea, sit for 10 minutes. No reason was given. Yusuf was given a task and a timeline. By the first week of October, he needed to be the kind of man who could plausibly sit in Tariq's courtyard without raising any question from anyone watching. He managed it in 9 days. In Tel Aviv, Handler 40 received the authorization package on September 27th. 3 signatures. 1 from the operational directorate, 1 from the legal officer attached to the targeting committee, 1 from a department head whose name 40 had never seen on a document before. The package authorized the operation through its first phase, the death of Tariq al-Mazari, to be executed in a manner consistent with natural cardiac failure. Target date no later than October 8th. Handler 40 read through it at his desk, alone. He set the document down. He had 36 hours to finalize the delivery method and confirm the asset was in position. The substance selected accelerated cardiac arrhythmia in patients with pre-existing heart conditions. Administered in liquid, it metabolized within hours and left no residue a standard autopsy would identify as separate from the body's own chemistry, failing under stress. Dosage had been calibrated to Tariq's weight, his age, and his documented medication. The calibration had taken 11 days. Yusuf's field handler was a separate operational channel from Handler 40, the targeting officer in Tel Aviv who held the overall operation. Yusuf knew one voice on one phone. He did not know Handler 40 existed. Yusuf received the compound on October 2nd through a dead drop, a loose brick in the outer wall of a disused storage building 3 kilometers from his shop. A small cloth pouch. No note. He knew what it was. October 3rd, 2006, late afternoon. Yusuf arrived at Tariq's courtyard gate with a bag of supplies, flour, cooking oil, dried herbs, and the offer of a visit. Tariq was already outside. The white ceramic cup sat on the table beside him, empty, the afternoon tea finished. Tariq waved him in. A second cup was brought out by Tariq's wife, and she returned inside. The courtyard was quiet. Yusuf reached into his jacket pocket for a folded shopping list, a practiced gesture, one he had used twice in the previous 9 days. The vial was palmed in the same hand. When he set the list on the table and drew it toward himself, the compound went into the cup. They talked for 20 minutes, prices at the market, a road repair near the port. Tariq drank. Yusuf left at 5:15 and did not look back. 4 days later, on the morning of October 7th, Tariq al-Mazari did not appear in the courtyard at his usual hour. His wife found him in the bedroom at 7:40, unresponsive. The ambulance arrived 12 minutes later. The attending physician noted the heart condition, the medication, the heat. He wrote cardiac arrest on the form and moved to the next patient. The burial notice went out that afternoon. Word moved through the Khan Yunis network the way news of a death always moves, through phones, through intermediaries, through the quiet obligation that settles over a closed organization when one of its own is gone. Walid Barakat received the news through a courier. Nasser Qasim heard it from a mutual contact. Each of the 9 commanders received the information separately, through separate channels, and each arrived at the same conclusion without discussion. Tariq had served 6 years without a failure.
His funeral was not optional. Unit 8200 monitored the communications traffic through the night. By 3 in the morning, 4 of the 9 had confirmed attendance through intercepted calls. By 6, 7. By noon on October 8th, all 9 had been placed at the burial through intercepts specific enough to constitute hard confirmation. Handler 40 received the signals report at 1400 hours. He read through the intercepts, cross-referenced each confirmation against the active files, and made a single notation on the cover page of the operation folder. Then he walked to the window of his office and stood there for a moment without moving. The funeral was set for October 14th. He had 6 days. 6 days. That was the operational timeline from final confirmation to strike. Handler 40 divided the preparation into 4 parallel tracks that ran simultaneously and did not intersect. The weapons team at Ramon Air Base worked the ordnance. The drone unit coordinated the surveillance rotation. The ground observer in Khan Yunis secured his position. And at Unit 8200, a separate analytical cell ran continuous intercept monitoring on all 9 targets, tracking any signal that one of them had changed his plans, received new information, or been warned. No signal came. The weapons modification had been completed 3 weeks before the operation date. The standard GBU-39 small-diameter bomb carried a published lethal radius of approximately 24 meters. For a strike in a densely populated residential district, with 300 mourners standing in an open cemetery surrounded by houses and a school 2 blocks east, that radius was not a margin of error. It was a mass casualty event. The targeting committee had forwarded the constraint to the Air Force Technical Division with a single requirement: reduce the lethal radius to 8 meters without compromising the weapon's ability to reach the target intact. The solution was tested at a closed range in the Negev. A weapons technician, designated Captain R in the operations technical file, walked a pilot through what the modification actually did. The test structure was a sand flat arrayed with target markers in a 6-meter cluster. The standard weapon used a contact fuse that detonated on impact. The modified version used a proximity sensor set to trigger at half a meter above ground level, combined with a fragmentary sleeve engineered to direct the blast pattern downward and inward rather than outward. The first test detonated 4 centimeters too high. The fragmentation pattern spread to 11 meters. Captain R marked the result, adjusted the sensor calibration, and ran the test again. The second detonation was at 48 centimeters, lethal radius 8.2 meters. Every marker in the 6-meter cluster was destroyed. The markers beyond 10 meters were intact. Captain R pointed at the inner crater and turned to the pilot.
"The spread is directional," he said. "The geometry has to be right. If your approach angle is off by more than 4 degrees at release, the fragmentation pattern rotates and you lose the inner containment."
The pilot, designated Captain M in the operational files, looked at the crater. He asked what 4 degrees translated to at release altitude given his airspeed and the weapon's descent profile. Captain R gave him a number. Captain M said nothing. He memorized it and did not write it down. The drone had been circling over Khan Yunis since October 9th, 5 days before the funeral. Its operators rotated in 6-hour shifts at a forward base. The camera system resolved facial features at operational altitude in full daylight, and the analytical team had assembled a target confirmation package for each of the 9 commanders. Surveillance photographs, checkpoint images, one photograph recovered from a Hamas internal document seized in a West Bank raid 2 years earlier.
For 2 of the 9, the photo file held a single image. For those 2, the confirmation team had prepared secondary identification markers. A specific scar on one man, a prosthetic partial finger on another, that the drone camera could capture from above if a face was partially obscured. Identifying 9 specific faces in a crowd of 300 was a problem of patience and light. The analytical cell estimated 20 to 25 minutes from the funeral start to full confirmation, assuming standard daylight and unobstructed sightlines. The drone fuel load allowed for 9 hours over target. The ground observer was a Shin Bet operative who had been in Khan Yunis under commercial cover for 3 weeks. His position was a rooftop 240 meters from the Al-Amal cemetery, accessed through an arrangement with a building owner that had taken 11 days and 3 intermediaries to establish. From there, he held line of sight to the burial ground and a secondary view of the main approach road. His equipment? A 40-power spotting scope, an encrypted communication device, and a laser designator that would remain inactive until he received a single confirmation code from Handler 40. He had practiced the activation sequence until he could complete it in 4 seconds. On the evening of October 13th, the night before the funeral, Harik al-Mazari's wife, Hannah, ironed the dress she would wear the next morning. The iron moved across the dark fabric in the small room adjacent to the courtyard. Outside, on the low table where Tariq had taken his tea every afternoon for 11 years, the white ceramic cup sat where Hannah had placed it after washing it the week before. She had not moved it since. She set the iron down, folded the dress over the back of a chair. Then she stood in the doorway to the courtyard for a moment, looking at the table. The next morning, when the men came to collect the items for the graveside, she took the cup from the table and handed it to them without explanation. The courtyard was dark and quiet, the way it had been quiet since October 7th. In Tel Aviv, Handler 40 was at his desk past midnight. The intercept reports for the day lay stacked in a folder to his left. All 9 targets confirmed present in Khan Yunis. No unusual movement, no indication of alarm. The network was absorbing Tariq's death the way these networks always absorbed loss. Quietly, and without stopping. In 5 hours it would begin sending its most senior men to bury him. Handler 40 initialed the final authorization sheet and passed it to the duty officer at 0000 hours. Nothing moved now until morning. October 14th, 0600 hours. Captain M crossed the tarmac at Ramon Air Base in full flight gear and stopped at the aircraft. The weapons technician met him there. The modified GBU-39 was already mounted on the centerline pylon. Fusing parameters set, guidance system initialized. The technician ran the pre-flight checklist in the standard sequence. At the last item, he looked up. Approach angle within 4 degrees. Captain M nodded once. He climbed into the cockpit. At 0700, the drone crew transmitted the first situation report. Mourners arriving at the Al-Amal cemetery. 70 people. 100. The crowd growing in the early morning heat. None of the 9 targets visible yet. Senior men arrived last at Gaza burials, an unspoken measure of how much their presence meant. They would come when the crowd was full and the eyes were already on the grave. At 0850, Captain M reached his holding position 40 kilometers west of Khan Yunis. He reduced speed, settled into a circular pattern, and waited. If the bomb's lethal radius was 8 meters and all 9 commanders would stand within 6, what changed 41 seconds after the drone operator transmitted the words, "Window open"? October 14th, 2006, 0600 hours. The Al-Amal district of Khan Yunis was already moving. Vendors opening shutters, a motorcycle turning onto the main road. Somewhere 3 blocks north, a generator running. The morning carried the ordinary sounds of a neighborhood waking before the heat arrived. At the Al-Amal cemetery, 2 men with shovels had finished the grave before sunrise. The hole was standard depth.
The mound of displaced earth sat to one side, dry and pale. A low folding table had been set up nearby, the kind used at outdoor gatherings throughout Gaza, carrying a tray with a thermos of tea and several cups. At the edge of the tray, set apart from the others, sat a single white ceramic cup. Hannah had sent it with the men who came to prepare the grave that morning.
It was Tariq's cup. She said nothing when she handed it over. The men did not ask. The drone operator's first transmission came at 0714. Crowd forming, estimate 40 present, no primary targets visible. The observer on the rooftop, designated in the operation file as Ground 1, had been in position since 0630. He lay on a folded blanket with his 40-power spotting scope positioned through a gap in the low parapet wall. The cemetery was visible in full. The approach road from the north stretched clear for 180 meters. He could see the folding table, the mound of earth, the imam speaking to two men near the mosque entrance adjacent to the burial ground. He logged the time and transmitted. Position stable, sightlines clear, designator ready. He did not transmit again for 22 minutes. In the cockpit, 40 kilometers west, Captain M held the circular pattern and watched his instruments. Fuel nominal. Guidance system active. The modified GBU-39 sat on the center line pylon with its parameters set and locked. He had nothing to do but maintain altitude and wait for the radio. The crowd at the cemetery grew through the morning. By 8:30, the drone counted 140. By 9, 190. The burial prayers were scheduled to begin at 9:30. Standard Gaza practice placed the interment, the lowering of the body and the standing at the graveside, at approximately 10 to 10:20, depending on the length of the recitation. That was the window. Not the prayer, the standing. At 9:07, Ground 1's optics picked up the first of the 9. Walid Barakat entered the cemetery from the eastern gate, walking with two men Ground 1 did not recognize. Barakat's face matched the confirmation photograph, the same jawline, the same downward set of the left brow the file had flagged as a distinguishing marker. Ground 1 transmitted the confirmation code for Target 1 and continued scanning. At 9:14, two more arrived simultaneously from the northern approach, Nasser Qasim and the man the operation file listed as Target 4, responsible for recruitment in the southern sector. Both confirmed within 90 seconds. At 9:19, Target 2 entered through the western pedestrian gate alone. Ground 1 tracked him for 40 seconds through the scope. The man moved with a slight forward lean that matched the gate description in the surveillance file. Confirmed. The analytical team at the drone relay station was running the facial data in real time. Each confirmation came back to Handler 40's forward command post, established the previous evening in a building on the Israeli side of the perimeter, as a single line on a screen. Target 1, confirmed. Target 2, confirmed. Target 3, confirmed. Target 4, confirmed. By 9:26, 6 of the 9 had entered the cemetery. Target 7 and 8 arrived together at 9:31 during the opening of the burial prayers. Both locked to the right side of the gathering, positioning themselves at the outer edge of the crowd, now close to 300 people. Ground 1 tracked them through the scope and confirmed. 8 of 9. The 9th was late. At 9:44, the prayers were still running. The body had not yet been moved to the grave. Ground 1 scanned the approach roads and saw nothing. Handler 40 requested an update on the intercept traffic for Target 9. Unit 8200 came back within 4 minutes. The last confirmed signal placing Target 9 in Khan Yunis had been logged the previous evening at 2100 hours. No movement detected since. No indication he had left the district. At 9:51, a man entered the eastern gate alone and moved quickly through the outer crowd toward the front. Ground 1 held the frame for 8 seconds. Checking the scar on the left forearm, the file had listed as the secondary identification marker. At that range, in full morning light, through 40-power optics, the scar was visible. He transmitted.
Target 9 confirmed at 9:53. Handler 40 received the confirmation, waited 4 seconds, and transmitted to the relay station a single authorization code. The relay forwarded it to Ground 1 and simultaneously to Captain M's cockpit radio. Captain M heard the code, checked it against the card taped to his instrument panel, and banked east. The body of Tariq El-Masri was lowered into the grave at 10:04. The Imam recited the final passage of the burial rite. The crowd pressed forward. The 9 commanders moved with it, closing toward the graveside in the natural compression that happens when 300 people take a single collective step. Ground 1 watched them through the scope and measured the gap between bodies.
6 meters, 5.5,
All 9 within the radius. He activated the laser designator. The sequence took 4 seconds. The beam was live. He transmitted. Window open. Captain M was 32 seconds from release point. At 10:06 and 19 seconds, a group of 8 children entered the cemetery from a gap in the southern wall. Between 7 and 12 years old, drawn by the crowd the way children are drawn to any large gathering in a neighborhood where large gatherings were not routine. They moved toward the open grave with the directness of people who do not yet understand that some moments require them to stay back. Ground 1 tracked them in the scope, moving toward the inner circle, toward the grave, toward the 6-meter cluster where all 9 commanders stood. He transmitted. Hold fire. Civilians moving to target position. Estimate arrival at grave 60 to 90 seconds. Captain M received the transmission at 10:06 and 22 seconds.
He was 26 seconds from release.
He pulled up 15 degrees and extended his circuit. He transmitted back, holding, awaiting clearance. In the command post, Handler 40 watched the drone feed. The children were visible. 8 figures moving through the packed crowd, finding gaps, advancing toward the front. On the same feed, 2 of the 9 commanders had turned and were speaking to each other. One glanced back toward the gate. 20 seconds passed. 30. At 10:07 and 11 seconds, the children stopped at the outer edge of the inner circle. A woman in a dark headscarf appeared from the left side of the frame and turned the nearest child by the shoulder, gesturing back toward the wall. The children retreated 6 meters. But in those 31 seconds, 2 commanders had moved. Ground 1 tracked them. One was still within the radius, at the edge, 7.5 meters from the designator point.
The other had stepped 4 paces back into the crowd and was partially obscured by 2 larger men standing between him and the grave.
Handler 40 transmitted to Ground 1. Confirm current spread. Ground 1 responded in 8 seconds. 7 of 9 within radius. Target 2 at 7.5. Target 6 obscured. Estimated window, 11 seconds before Target 6 exits crowd. 11 seconds. Captain M had already begun his second approach. Handler 40 transmitted the release authorization. Captain M pressed weapons release at 10:08 and 40 seconds. The GBU-39 dropped clean from the pylon, fins deploying, guidance surfaces orienting to the laser point Ground 1 was holding steady on the earth at the edge of the open grave. The weapon fell through clear sky, through the fronds of a date palm at the cemetery's eastern edge, one branch severing and falling separately, and detonated at 46 centimeters above ground level at 10:09 and 14 seconds. The blast propagated downward and inward. The folding table beside the grave went over in the first millisecond. The thermos, the tray, every cup on it. The pressure wave moved outward through the crowd beyond the inner circle. People went down, thrown sideways, some covering their heads without knowing why. At 8 meters, the fragmentation stopped. At 10 meters, people were already getting back to their feet. The white ceramic cup at the edge of the tray landed on its side in the dirt 3 meters from the crater, intact. Ground 1 was already moving off the rooftop. Captain M banked west and climbed without transmitting. At the command post, Handler 40 watched the drone feed for 40 seconds without speaking. The dust cloud was still settling over the eastern section of the cemetery.
People were running toward the edges of the frame. One figure was motionless on the ground near the grave. Then two. Then more as the image sharpened. He turned to the signals officer beside him.
Get me confirmation.
The confirmation came in 4 separate transmissions over the following 90 minutes. Unit 8200 was monitoring every active communication channel in the Con-Unis network simultaneously. The first calls began within 3 minutes of the detonation. Fragments of sentences, names, voices stripped of their usual operational discipline. Analysts flagged each one and logged the time. By 10:30, the intercept cell had built a preliminary casualty picture from the network's own internal communications. All 9 were dead. Walid Barakat, Nasser Qassem, the recruiter, the financial coordinator, the 2 men responsible for rocket production facilities in the southern sector, the counter-surveillance chief who had identified and removed 2 Israeli assets from peripheral network positions over the previous 3 years. All 9. The signals officer read the confirmation list to Handler 40 in order, one name at a time.
Handler 40 did not respond until the 9th name. Then he said, "Civilian count." The blast radius had contained itself to the inner circle of mourners at the graveside. The modified fragmentation pattern had performed within the parameters established at the Negev range. Beyond 10 meters, the crowd had been thrown by the pressure wave. 11 people were taken to hospital with blast injuries, perforated eardrums, lacerations from falling, 1 broken arm from the impact with the ground. None were critical. The 8 children who had been redirected by the woman in the dark headscarf were visible in the footage, running toward the southern wall, upright, moving under their own power. No fatalities outside the target group. The signals officer confirmed the figure at 11:04. Handler 40 wrote it on the cover page of the operation folder in the space designated for collateral assessment. He underlined it once.
In Con-Unis, a man named Samir was returning home at 11:30 from a delivery job in the northern part of the district. He was 26 years old, a low-level courier for the Qassam Brigades, one of dozens of men who moved materials and messages between cells without ever being told what the materials contained or where the messages went. He had not been invited to Tariq al-Mazari's funeral. His rank did not require it. He had spent the morning driving. He turned onto his street and saw a neighbor standing in a doorway. The neighbor looked at him with the stillness of a person who did not want to be the one to speak. Samir stopped. "What happened?" The neighbor told him the names. Not all of them. He did not know all of them, but enough. The commander, Samir reported to. The logistics chief, 2 levels above that. The name at the top of his chain that Samir had only ever heard spoken in a lowered voice. Samir stood on the street for a moment. Then he walked inside his house, sat down at his kitchen table, and did not move for a long time. The Qassam Brigades in Khan-Yunis had no functional command structure by the end of October 14th. The 9 men killed at the Alamal cemetery had held between them every operational decision-making role in the district. The couriers, the technicians, the low-level operatives below them remained physically intact. But in the organizational logic the brigades had built over years, those men had no authority to act independently and no mechanism to appoint replacements from within. Command succession did not flow laterally. It moved downward from above. And everything above Khan-Yunis was in a different district, with different cells, different channels, different priorities. It took 16 months for a functioning command structure to be re-established in the southern sector.
Tariq al-Masri's spiral-bound notebook remained in a house in the Al-Amal district, in a shorthand only he could read. The workshop supervisors who remained could fabricate rocket components, but could not coordinate the distribution chain without someone who understood the full picture. Shipments sat in storage. 3 production facilities suspended operations within 6 weeks, not from external pressure, but from the absence of anyone authorized to restart them. In the 12 months following October 14th, Qassam rocket launches from the Khan district fell by 70% compared to the same period the previous year. The vacuum created one further consequence that extended past the operational count. The brigades were forced to recruit and promote replacements faster than their screening protocols allowed. 3 of those replacements were identified by Unit 8200 within 8 months. 2 produced actionable intelligence for subsequent operations.
Yusuf, active 31, received a final message through the dead drop on October 17th, 3 days after the funeral. The cloth pouch contained no instructions, no task, no compound. It contained cash and a handwritten line directing him to a bank account in Amman. His field handler made no further contact. The dead drop location was cleared and abandoned. Yusuf's file was marked inactive and placed in a long-term archive. What he understood about the scope of what he had enabled, the 9 names, the 16 months, the 70%, his file did not record. His field handler never told him. Assets were given what they needed to complete their task. The consequences belonged to someone else's folder. In Tel Aviv, Handler 40 spent the 2 days following the operation completing the required operational review. Every decision point documented, every authorization logged, technical results recorded against the parameters approved in the planning phase. He worked through it in order, the way he had worked through every review for 7 years. On the final page, there was a section for assessments and observations. Most handlers left it blank. Handler 40 filled it in, closed the folder, and carried it to the filing room at the end of the corridor. He placed it on the shelf. On his desk, when he returned, there was another folder waiting.